Yo, so the odds of becoming a billionaire are roughly 1 in 578,508, but it's not zero. And today I want to share a video with you guys on a guy that built a $6.5 billion company and his journey. I'll give you my takeaways as we go so that we can learn as much as possible. So let's not waste any time and get right into it.
Carnegie Mellon is an excellent university, but it is a stressful place. People aren't happy. It's not good. It's not a happy place. One of the things that Severin and I decided early on when we were starting a company is like, look, whatever happens, our company should be a happy place.
By the time Louis Van Ahn turned 24, he was already a millionaire several times over. The 43-year-old may not be a household name, but I'm willing to bet you're one of the hundreds of millions of people who uses technology every day. Louis isn't your average unicorn tech founder. He actually pays his drivers to give feedback on their interactions with potential executive-level hires on their way to and from the airport to weed out toxic personalities.
All right, Luis, thank you so much for taking some time out. I appreciate it.
That's so extra, like literally paying your drivers for some of your company executives to see how they rate them. That's low-key genius though, because how you interact with people, like a driver, for example, does say a lot about you. Like if you are kind of snotty and whatnot, you may give them a cold shoulder and stuff, and that would be valuable stuff to know, especially when hiring people.
Yeah, of course.
There are 3 numbers to look out for in Louis's story. 42,000, the amount he made each week digitizing copies of the New York Times, 183 million, the total amount of outside investment he raised, and 6.5 billion, the total valuation after Duolingo went public in June 2021. Here's how Louis Van Ahn built Duolingo, one of the most popular educational apps in the world, while managing to keep it free for almost everyone who uses it. For CNBC Make It, I'm Nate Skid. This is Founder Effect. Louis grew up far from the Ivy Leagues in Guatemala. His mother was a doctor and made sure he learned English at a younger age. For many people, that can be the difference between a life of struggle and one of opportunity.
How big of a deal do you think it was to go to an English program in terms of setting you on the path that you ended up on?
I think it was a huge deal. In Guatemala, for example, you could probably double your income potential by just the fact that you know English. Like you don't have to know anything else.
There were 2 formative moments in Louis's young life. The first was witnessing the tension in his family's candy business between the owners and their workers.
Different people in my family would, a lot of times just have this vision that it's like kind of us versus them.
The second was a visit from a recruiter from Duke University who was scouring Central America for undiscovered academic talent.
And she essentially she didn't quite fill out the application for me, but she almost filled out the application for me.
In 1996, Louis moved to the United States to attend Duke
that's when I was born.
University with no money to his name. Yet he still managed to graduate at the top of his class with the goal of becoming a math professor. But that dream didn't last long.
I realized that all the professors that were in math were doing research on problems that hadn't been solved for 500 years or whatever.
Louis wanted to spend his time and energy tackling new challenges. In 2000, he was accepted to a computer science PhD program at Carnegie Mellon, but it didn't take long for him to develop a knack for creating profitable businesses. In 2003, he created a simple game pairing 2 players and showed them each the same image. If their descriptions matched, they moved on to the next one.
You know what's interesting about this is that, I recently watched a podcast with Graham Stephan and Alex Hormozi, which you guys should definitely check out. It's really good. And Alex Hormozi, he's a $100 million entrepreneur, and he mentioned how if he were to tell anyone what to go to school for, he said he would recommend to go to school for math and English. And that's like literally this guy right here. So that's kind of crazy.
What they were doing is basically just telling Google what's in these images. And so that really, kind of improved image search, etc.
Louis says Google bought the game in 2003 for a couple $1 million. In 2006, Louis landed on his next big idea after listening to a talk by Yahoo's chief scientist. The problem was that spammers were writing code to steal millions of email addresses and flood those inboxes with junk mail. Louis's answer was called
this thing called a CAPTCHA.
I guess a couple $1 million is nothing to Google, so just like buying them out for a couple million is nothing to them, but to like a normal person, that's so much money.
Which is these distorted characters that you have to type, all over the internet whenever you're buying tickets on Ticketmaster or whatever. You get this image of kind of messed up characters. So we came up with that. That was our idea.
About 200 million people take 10 seconds out of their day to fill out a CAPTCHA. And while some would sit in amazement at their impact on humanity, Louis suffered from pangs of guilt, which led to his next big idea.
And so if you multiply 10 seconds by 200 million, I started thinking, okay, that turns out to be 500,000 hours every day. I started thinking, okay, can we make good use of these 500,000 hours? This gave to this rights to this kind of next project, which was called reCAPTCHA. So it's like a redoing of CAPTCHA, where the idea was that as people were typing these, over the internet, not only would they be authenticating themselves as a human, but they would helping us to digitize books.
Word of the new tech reached the New York Times, which was in the process of digitizing.
I didn't know this guy was the guy behind CAPTCHA. I mean, that's pretty interesting. That's a significant monument within the internet. So I didn't know the Duolingo guy was the ssame guy as the CAPTCHA guy.
About 150 years worth of old newspapers. Lewis charged the Times $42,000 for every year of content he digitized.
We could digitize an entire year of content in about a week. So pretty quickly we started getting checks for $42,000, like, about one a week.
Lewis founded reCAPTCHA in 2006 and sold it to Google in 2009 for an undisclosed sum, but he said it was in the tens of millions of dollars.
This guy's crazy. He sold multiple different sort of applications to Google for tens of millions of dollars. That's so cool.
In 2006, Lewis was awarded the MacArthur Fellowship, also known as the Genius Grant, that came with $500,000 and no strings attached.
It's not like you apply for it or anything. Just one day you get a phone call, and they just ask if. Fortunately, I picked up the phone because, nowadays if I get a random phone call, I do not pick up the phone.
So what did you do with the $500,000?
Put it in the bank account. Honestly, I probably spent it mostly on a little seed funding for this reCAPTCHA.
So where did the aha moment for a language service come about? Where did this happen?
Yeah, that was like around 2009, 2010.
That's a good question, and especially for those of you that follow this channel for business advice and like trying to come up with ideas. I do a lot of case studies, and that's the reason why. I'm really curious to see how a billionaire goes about getting ideas for a business.
I had sold reCAPTCHA to Google. I had a PhD student named Severin Hacker, who is my co-founder at Duolingo. At the time, we hadn't started anything. One of the insights was, computers are getting much smarter, and we could make it so that computers really could teach everybody as opposed to teachers having to teach everybody. That was kind of the idea.
Now that they knew they wanted to teach, they just needed to agree on a subject.
Eventually, we settled on teaching languages. And the reason for that was because both of us learned English. So we thought, okay, let's do something to teach English. The other thing that we really wanted to do was we really saw technology as a way to be able to really democratize education. The beautiful thing with technology is that it doesn't cost you that much more to teach more people than just to teach one person. So we thought, okay, well, we teach everybody and we could teach them for free.
And just like that, Duolingo was born. Well, sort of.
So how do you come up with the name Duolingo?
We looked at a lot of names. One of the ones was FLOONT, which should sound kind of like fluent, but it more sounded like fluent. And then, my friend said, oh, that sounds like I flunted all over the floor. Like, it's like not good. So we had a bunch of names. Eventually we came up with not Duolingo, but Monolingo.
Coming up with a name is so hard, and I'm glad to see that even billionaires struggle with that. But that's so crazy. I love that framework of like, okay, they thought about, we want to start a company related to having computers teaching people as opposed to people teaching people because it's much more efficient and scalable. And then from that idea, they then niched it down to languages. That's so cool and so interesting.
And that sounded like an illness, like you have monolingo. And at some point, Duolingo made a lot of sense.
Now that they had a name and a mascot, it was time to turn their idea into a business. Instead of applying for a grant through Carnegie Mellon, in 2012, Lewis reached out to Union Square investors and secured $3 million in seed funding.
They had just invested in like Twitter and Tumblr, and they were like the biggest thing out there, and Foursquare was also the biggest thing out there. And so Union Square Ventures was like, oh my God, like amazing.
Okay, so can you tell me the amount that Series A from Union Square was?
Yeah, I mean, one thing that is important to mention is Series A back then, this is the year 2012, were very different than Series A's today, which today is just massive. So in 2012, a very nice Series A that you were happy with was $3 million. $3 million. Today, that's not even called a Series A. Today it's like seed funding.
Around that time, Lewis gave a TED Talk. And at the end, he made mention of this really cool new application focusing on language that he was working on. Well, that talk went viral, and soon, Duolingo, which at the time was just a landing page with a place to put an email address, had a waiting list with over 300,000 names on it.
Wow.
At the time, the other thing that was going on at the time was there wasn't really a good way to learn a language on the computer. I mean, the thing that there was Rosetta Stone, and it was like super expensive. It was like $1,000. And so there was this thing that just said, you can learn a language here and it's entirely for free. And so a lot of people were like, yeah, sure, I'll give you my my email. And so, that
Free is a powerful word, especially when it comes to, markets where access to information is really expensive. I got a business in the education space too, but it's mostly about like e-commerce and side hustles. And when you sign up, you get a course for free. You can check it out in the description if you're interested.
worked out pretty well.
The instantaneous interest in Duolingo and his proven track record helped Lewis raise even more capital, $183 million in all. He used almost all of that early investment money to build out a team, and for the next 3 years, he focused solely on growing his user base. He didn't even think about monetization.
Up until 2017-ish, Duolingo was making no money. This was our finances were very simple. Simply, we spent money on mainly people's salaries. And that was, at that point though, we decided it's probably time to make Duolingo be a self-sustaining business. And we started actually monetizing, and it has worked out very well.
By now, Lewis says Duolingo had about 10 million active users and was the #1 education app in the world. Now they just had to figure out how to make money while keeping the app free.
We didn't just want to say, turn around and say, oh, just kidding. Now you got to pay. So what we ended up doing is we ended up coming up with a business model that ends up being pretty similar to, say, what Spotify does or what the dating apps do, which is you can use Duolingo as much as you want for free. But if you don't pay us, you have to see some ads at the end of a lesson. And then if you want to turn off the ads, you can pay us to subscribe, and then we turn off the ads, and we may give you other kind of premium features. So that combo of ads and subscription worked out really well. And so we ended up making every year since then, we've made more and more money.
A full 94% of Duolingo's active monthly users opt for the free version, which includes some ads. But the company makes most of its revenue from the other 6% of its users who are paying subscribers.
From 6% of our users give us the majority of our money by now.
Wow.
There are more people.
So 6% of their users give them the majority of their cash flow. So they, of course, sell ads to businesses and put those on the free version. But that's crazy that they're making the majority of their money from the subscription. And it's really interesting how that model is the same as, all these other billion-dollar companies. I guess it's a winning business model, and it's proven to work. So they just, copied it.
People in the U.S. learning languages on Duolingo than there are students learning languages in all U.S. high schools combined. And one of the reasons for Duolingo's success is that it feels like a game. In fact, the app keeps track of how many consecutive days a user logs in. Skip a day, and it goes to 0.
We have over, by now, I mean, we haven't quite released the figure, but we have released this one, which is we have over 1 million daily active users who have a streak longer than 365. So we have more than
That's crazy.
They haven't missed a single day in the last year.
That's actually insane. Over 1 million daily users that have used the app for over a year straight.
What day did you IPO? What was it like for you personally? Were you nervous? Do you remember the moment?
It was extremely exciting, and it's a big milestone for the company and for everybody who has been working on this. I mean, Duolingo has really good employee retention, as in, like, people really rarely leave Duolingo. So most of the original team is still here. And so there's been all these people that have been at this for, the last, 8-9 years. So it was pretty transformative.
What happened to the share price?
Our share price was $102. It went really high. I mean, the first trade was 140, I don't know, maybe 141 or something like that. I don't know the exact number, but it's around 140, and then it just kept going up, etc.
You don't know? That would be like plastered on my wall as like a big memory.
Share price is. I was told by a lot of CEOs of publicly traded companies not to pay too much attention to share price, and I've been doing that, and it's actually really good feedback. Here's basically your share price moves randomly, with basically no connection to what's going on with the company.
That's true. I actually heard Amazon's Jeff Bezos, right, Amazon CEO, he said the same thing. He's like, even when our share price has been really low, the company is making all-time highs in terms of like the back end, right? Like how much the company's actually making and stuff. So share price isn't actually reflecting the value of a business accurately.
What was the biggest money mistake you've made along the way with Duolingo?
I don't feel bad about anything we've done. By the time we went public, we still had $100 and some million in the bank account, meaning we had only really spent 80 million. Of course, we had been making some revenue the last few years, etc. But basically, we could have raised a lot less money. And by raising a lot less money, I think us employees, me and the rest of the employees, would have owned a larger fraction of the company.
When I was talking to the management team about interviewing you, one of the other senior producers said that she had gotten very far in the interview process at Duolingo. You guys flew her out to Pittsburgh, you put her up, and she said that even though she didn't get the position, the culture and the vibe at Duolingo stayed with her. And she was like, Nate, you have to ask about that culture. And so it dawned on me when you were telling me about this candy factory that you watched and then hearing about the culture that you created. And I'm wondering if you can kind of sew that up for me, like what you learned there and what you apply now.
Most tech companies, there's a lot of employee churn, meaning like people leave the company, etc. Very few people leave Duolingo. It's because it's a good workplace. And I think that there's two reasons for that. I think what I saw with my family, and this is not, it's not that my family was doing anything bad or anything. It's just in a country like Guatemala, there really is a kind of a boss versus employee, like us versus them kind of thing. And I saw that really didn't work. I mean, it's much better when everybody is much more egalitarian culture. So Duolingo has in as much as possible, a very egalitarian culture. That's one thing. The other thing is, when we were at Carnegie Mellon is an excellent university. I have nothing bad to say about it. It is really an excellent university, excellent for artificial intelligence, excellent for all kinds of things. But it is a stressful place, and people, when you enter the buildings there, people aren't happy. It's not good. It's not a happy place. One of the things that Severin and I decided early on when we were starting a company is like, look, whatever happens, our company should be a happy place.
Louis has a unique way of weeding out potentially toxic employees.
I'll tell you some of the things we've done, by the way, even for executives. Whenever we fly an executive for an interview, or not just executive, for a lot of people, whenever we fly them, we have a driver go pick them up in the airport, and we have a set of drivers that are the same everywhere. That's part of your interview, and people don't know it. It is how you treat them, and so we get feedback from the drivers about how well they were treated. And so now normally most people are just perfectly fine, but we have not made offers to very, very qualified, competent people because they were nasty to our driver, and we're like, oh, we don't like that because that just means you're gonna be nasty to the little people, true. And we don't want that.
That's clever.
And so yeah, I think that type of stuff has really helped.
Louis's businesses have been incredibly successful, and yet they all seem to serve a greater purpose. The picture matching game had the added benefit of generating SEO terms. CAPTCHA helped Yahoo and many, many other digital businesses decipher between humans and robots, and reCAPTCHA is helping to digitize the world's books. These ideas have made Louis incredibly wealthy, but he's most proud of the culture he created at Duolingo.
A lot of the people that come work at Duolingo do so because they love this mission of developing the best education in the world and making it universally available.
Wow, so cool. We actually watched this video right here too, how this guy built a $7 billion shoe company, and it was just as good as this one. But man, I actually love these CNBC Make It videos, especially with these $1 billion founders. I feel like every time I learn so much, and that's why I like watching these with you guys, because I want to learn together. I mean, that's sort of the purpose of my YouTube channel, and I'm just really grateful that I can even do that. I think that's awesome. I would regularly watch these videos on my own, but it's much better if I can just watch it with you guys. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this. I definitely did. I got a lot of takeaways here. This guy's like an actual genius. I can see it just in the way that he even communicates and all of the businesses that he's built. It's really cool and really inspiring. But that's about it. Make sure you check out this video or wherever it is. It's probably going to be pretty interesting if you watch this video all the way through. And I hope you have an amazing rest of your day. I'll see y'all in my next video. Peace.